Hello everyone, and welcome to our first ever Creative Operations Asia Pacific event. It's my pleasure to introduce our conference chair, Amanda Gower. Over to you, Amanda.
Thanks, Millie. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to each and every one of you to the inaugural Henry Stewart Creative Operations Asia Pacific 2022 event, Making Creative Work Better. Thank you to all the attendees from across the globe for joining to celebrate all things creative ops. We'd also, of course, like to thank our sponsors for supporting the event. So when you get the time, please visit them throughout the conference via the exhibition tab to find out more about them. Now, during the sessions, we encourage you to chat with your fellow attendees and, of course, make the most of our expert lineup by submitting your questions using the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can also use the chat tab to get into the conversation, to get the conversation going, and to navigate to the lounge tab, where you can participate in real-time networking with industry peers. Now, if at any point during the event you need assistance from the Henry Stewart team, please use the chat bot on the bottom right hand of your screen. Right, now that the formalities are out of the way, I'd like to take you on a short journey. As a way of an introduction, as you know, my name is Amanda Gower, and I proudly lead creative services and production operations for Schneider Electric, and I'm your chair for the event. I've been working in the industry for approximately 37 years. I was originally born in the UK, where I worked for for many award-winning creative agencies such as Wieden & Kennedy, Ogilvy, Publicis, Bates, Young & Rubicon, etc. And I've spent the last 12 years in Australia. So I moved from London to Australia, from the wonderful world of B2C to the wonderful yet very, very different world of B2B. And not only that, some might call it the dark side, I moved from agency to client. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because whether you work agency side, whether you work B2B, B2C, client side, or even production, the challenges I've witnessed, that I'm sure all of you have too, they're all very similar, and there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of common goals as to what we are all trying to achieve, regardless whether you work for agency or client, B2B, B2C, wherever you work. So throughout this event, with the wisdom, vision, and experience of, quite frankly, our amazing speakers, we aim to shed some light on how we can avoid those challenges and, of course, achieve those common goals. We'll also be discussing, what does the future look like and where is the industry heading? Finally, I'd like to share my vision for the future of creative operations. Creative operations simply deserves a seat at the table. Creative operations has outgrown a process and workflow department. It's outgrown the nice to have. It's outgrown the luxury department. It's grown rapidly over the years to provide tangible, effective business results. If you think about it, creative operations provides the efficiency, the automation, the workflow, the process. It drives and organizes the creating, the doing, the delivery, the data, the tools, and the taxonomy. All this in order to make strategic outcomes possible. Now, all of these goals, of course, are aligned with company strategy in order to get to our customers quicker with the information they need to take them on that buying journey with rich content, so they invest in the products and the services that we are all promoting. Now, I've met a fair few creatives in my time, and whilst this may sound a little generalist, I've yet to meet one creative who enjoys that business side of creative. the statistics, the analytics, the reporting, the timing plans. But that's what drives it all. And that's what creative services and what you and I thrive on. And that is why we need to move from the engine room to the boardroom, so that not only our contribution is visible, but it's celebrated at board level as well. And one person who is no stranger to the boardroom is our talented and fascinating keynote speaker. So I'd like to dive in and introduce you to the wonderful Piyush Patel. Now, he will be sharing his wisdom on metaverse marketing, building and marketing a brand new universe. Now, this presentation, I promise you, will provide you with so much inspiration, as it did I, and will leave you wanting to know more. So please take full use of the Q&A in these sessions. And without further ado, please welcome Piyush Patel. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, Amanda. Hello, everyone. My name is Piyush Bhatia, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at the Metaverse company, RFOX. More than anything else, I'm here today to ask you to be curious, be experimental, and take risks. But before I ask you to take that big leap with me, let me please introduce myself and give you a background. I come from a typical middle-class Indian family. I was brought up with traditional values, and my parents wanted me to become a doctor when I grew up. When growing up in India, most parents want their kids to either be a doctor or an engineer, right? That's the norm. So dutifully, I took up science in school. Of course, I had no aptitude for it, and I failed miserably in both chemistry and physics, and just about barely passed in biology. And thankfully, my parents, and I took this as a clue and decided that maybe a future in arts is more suitable to my personality and skill set. Cue the avatar on the screen that you see, but we will talk about that a little later. Anyway, this took me on a journalism school. This took me to a journalism school, actually one of the best in India. I fared rather well at the entrance exam, contrary to how badly I fared in science, and landed me my first internship at CNN's India affiliate. For those of you who have worked in news before, you will understand the rush a 20-something would get out of news production. I did it for a few years. I rose within the ranks quick enough to move from general news desk to being a rundown and bulletin producer. But after 3 years of mind-numbing amount of news breaks, I decided to make the switch to entertainment. I moved to Bombay, which is where I live currently, worked on some trashy reality shows, which I loved, by the way, and eventually landed up at Star India to manage English language content and channels. I've had an interesting career journey. I continued to work in television for the next few years while getting increasingly conscious of the fact that streaming was on the rise, and the solution it provided for the problems that the audience faced was habit altering in a sense. By the end of it, it was also pretty clear that traditional television, with its schedules and inflexibility, was not going to be able to match the investment that was being made into content, technology, and ease of viewership by streaming services. That's when I pivoted to OTT. I joined an OTT platform as the head of editorial, but made it a point to spend time learning more and more about the tech behind it all. Everything from recommendation engines and algorithms to emerging tech like auto subtitling and dubbing. The inherent curiosity took over, and I was able to learn a lot about UI, UX, customers' journeys, product design and price points, while creatively marketing OTT shows and movies in theaters. I have always been experimental with my career choices. My journey took me to ShareItNext, one of the world's fastest growing apps and an absolute powerhouse in the emerging markets. My task there was to launch a few short form video apps and create and monetize the emerging creator economy. This also gave me a good pivot into Southeast Asia market. I was able to appreciate, understand, and work with cultures outside of my own. All this while learning, tracking the next big thing in technology, and trying to figure out how I can take my content skill sets and my understanding of the consumer and apply it elsewhere. This road led me to where I am today at RFOX. Metaverse did not happen to me by accident. I had seen what RFOX was building, and what attracted me to them was their approach on building multiple products and ventures together. RFOX is a metaverse builder that's aspiring to be the global leader in immersive metaverse experiences that are largely focused on retail, media, gaming, and rewards. With the core philosophy of digital inclusion, what they were doing was building each link of the chain at the same time so that when complete, it will automatically all fit in together. I don't think I had a full appreciation of just how vast this was till I actually joined them. Of course, I had a basic understanding of the concept of the metaverse, the NFTs, the crypto market. I had lost some money in crypto already, but nothing prepared me for the humongous amount of learning I was about to undertake. But that aside for a moment, one of the key factors was also to stay current and grow and learn new skills. I've always been acutely aware of how we get boxed in as creative professionals. And I've always wanted to avoid that, to be honest. I've pivoted and adapted to the ways of emerging tech. I've tried to find new frontiers and see if I could have a role to play in whatever is being built next. I moved from news pretty early on in my career to entertainment, from production to content acquisition, and to creative marketing, to being where I am today as CMO of a prominent metaverse startup, all with all with the need to stay relevant and not get left behind as the world moves on to newer and newer and newer technologies by the day. This brings me to the metaverse. Well, there is a reason that everyone is talking about it. Not a day goes by today when we don't hear someone as prominent as Mark Zuckerberg or Satya Nadella talk about this. And yes, you won't be wrong if it sounds like what the internet sounded like a few decades ago when it was being built. The building blocks today are being put in place for something whose actual iteration will only be visible a few years later. And as the New York Times very beautifully put it a couple of months ago, and I quote, "Crypto people say they're building it. Gamers might already be living in it. The art world is cashing in on it. Web veterans are trying to save it. But what the hell is this metaverse?" Well, simply put, the word metaverse was coined by author Neil Stephenson in his 1992 sci-fi novel, Snow Crash. In his book, Stephenson referred to the metaverse as an all-encompassing digital world that exists parallel to the real world. So the metaverse, hence, is a term for a collection of virtual worlds. It combines elements of virtual reality, augmented reality, which is VR and AR, online gaming, social media, and blockchain. The basic idea is to introduce a sense of presence to the internet. Think 3D avatars and synchronized virtual spaces that everybody can share simultaneously. You could potentially visit a friend's virtual house in the metaverse using a VR headset, or attend digital concerts and conferences with augmented reality glasses. You could be going shopping in it and trying on and buying new shoes and new clothes, but you wouldn't actually be going anywhere, just rather moving across the virtual world. Matthew Ball, a very prominent venture capitalist and essayist, describes the metaverse not just as a virtual world or a space, but as sort of a successor to the state of the mobile internet, a framework for an extremely connected life, and more importantly, what we all believe, the next iteration of the internet. When we talk about metaverse being the next iteration of the internet, we basically call it Web 3.0. The concept of Web 3.0 has now gained prominence recently, thanks in part to the increasing popularity of blockchain as the backbone of the future economy. And to the extent that it has started to become a conversation in governments, institutions, and more mainstream avenues. For example, in a recent hearing by the US Congress, Bitfury CEO Brian Brooks was asked about blockchain technology. And I will quote him here in a few sentences. In simple terms, Brian Brooks explained how the internet is evolving to a point where individuals have increasing power in shaping the future. Let me give you an example. Web 1.0 was something that gave people the ability to look in a curated walled garden at a set of content that was not interactive, but was presented to you as is by, let's say, AOL. You know, the way you see a Time magazine cover and you can see it in print, but when you wanted to look inside of it, you could see it on a screen on a computer. That was Web 1.0. The innovation of Web 2.0 was that suddenly you could not only read content, but you could also write content. However, while people could now create content under the currently prevailing Web 2.0, which is the world we live in as of now, they're playing under the rules of a few major platforms that let them do so and have limited power in the progress. I put here, the reason for the centralization of internet, of course, was that the activity was being monetized by a small number of companies. Facebook, Google, a couple other handful of big giants. What sets Web 3.0 different is the ability to own the actual network. And that's what crypto assets themselves represent, is an ownership stake in the underlying network. When you hear people talk about, for example, layer 1 tokens, what they mean is that your reward for providing the ledger maintenance services and computing power to the network is what on Web 1.2 was done by Google. This is why blockchain and cryptocurrencies are important in shaping Web 3.0. The blockchain allows people to directly own the networks that have native assets that are supporting them. That's the nature of decentralization, where the token holders are the people who control the networks that will operate Web 3.0. On top of the network are the kind of apps that get built on the network, much like the apps on your phone depend on, the underlying network existing, that are operating the phone. Is it likely to work? Of course, yes. Like Raoul Paul says it beautifully, and I quote, what is going on is we are building the third version of the internet in which we can participate and own parts of. If you think of Facebook, it's one of the biggest networks on earth. We've got the benefit of using the network and connecting with our friends and family on it, but it concentrated the power into Facebook and Google's and the likes of. The new part is decentralization, and that's the decentralization of the entire structure. We are basically pulling apart the existing structure and rebuilding it while giving the participants and users ownership of the network too. So that creates a massive behavioral change, incentives, right, for this to work, because suddenly you want this to work because the value of the network is going to grow up, and because you own a part of the network and the token, you are going to make money from it, and that's incredibly powerful. You are giving humans an incentive. You're giving humans an incentive which is likely to explode. It's unstoppable because of that, and it also gets rid of and disrupts some of the existing problems of the, massive corporations having control of the internet. In a nutshell, Web 3.0 will be a return to the original concept of the web, which was a place where one does not need permission from a central authority to post something. There is no central control. There is no single point of the failure. And you're probably starting to notice that more and more companies and countries are coming on board the Metaverse ship. Some companies already have their own metaverses, such as Sandbox and Decentraland. Disney is aspiring to be the happiest place in the metaverse. Tencent has registered more than 20 metaverse-related trademarks for its app in China. And the Seoul Metropolitan Government recently announced that it would be the first major city to enter the metaverse. Its preliminary name is Metaverse Seoul, and it intends to build a virtual communication ecosystem for all aspects of its municipal administration. Barbados will be the first country to open its embassy in the metaverse, and Meta, which is formerly Facebook, owns Oculus, the VR headset company that's currently being predominantly used for all things VR. Even we have our very own metaverse known as RFOX Vault. RFOX, coming to it, wants to empower everyone to play, create, and earn in a metaverse without borders. We aim to be the global leader in immersive technology focused on retail, entertainment, rewards, and community experiences. At the core of the RFOX philosophy is digital inclusion. The world has become more digital than ever, leaving behind a lot of people in regions, for example, such as Southeast Asia, where RFOX was created in 2018. To address this, we are solving the problems that businesses face in these economies. We are trying to simplify tech solutions that exclude the vast majority of people, and thereby creating immersive products and services that reward creators and engage participants to add value to the ecosystem. At the core is the RFOX Vault, a fully immersive shopping, retail, and entertainment experience in the virtual reality, combining various gaming elements and forming its own standalone metaverse. To plug into this, we have our own NFTs, white label, and marketplace, a gaming company that's building an ecosystem of interoperable tournament-based games, an online media venture, which is building solutions and platforms that allows users to earn rewards for creating content, basically, and through participative contribution, earn more rewards, and a finance venture that empowers our token holders to utilize DeFi products and services. Where do all of us fit in all of this? Oh, well, quite clearly, everywhere. As creative marketing professionals, we need to keep up and we need to contribute. We need to keep up with these crazy technological advancements, and we need to keep up with the dreams and aspirations of, the millennials and the Gen Z market. Not only do we need to help build this using our design skills, but it's also an opportunity for us to create a new visual and virtual world. And above all, we need to be curious, right? And adventurous and be experimental and take massive career risks to be able to reach a stage wherein we can be participative in the new world order. Well, and that's the note I wanted to leave you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Piyush. That was fabulous and fascinating, as I thought it was going to be. What an inspirational keynote. Thank you. There are some questions. I have some questions. Are we ready to dive into the questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So if we want our business to be part of the metaverse, where do we start?
So, quite frankly, you've got to need help here, and you've got to be able to take help here, right? It's very, we should be cognizant of the fact that not each of our companies are going to be able to create our own metaverses, right? That brings me to two central points I'll make before I answer that question. There are two kinds of metaverses being built, right? What all of the startups today are building are essentially decentralized networks that are able to plug into each other. So what happens today? Let me give you a couple of examples. You have WhatsApp, you have Instagram, you have Snapchat, you have TikTok. All of them don't plug into each other, right? You can't watch a video on Instagram but post a comment on TikTok. That's not how it works. What the new metaverses are going to allow you to do is they're going to allow you to interoperate between multiple worlds. So theoretically, you could be shopping in RFOX's retail ecosystem, but walk out into Decentraland or go into Sandbox from there, because that's the beauty of being in a virtual world, right? I mean, it allows you to flow freely between one place to another. From a business perspective, I think what each company needs to realize is that a bulk of audience is actually going to be sitting, we've known that our audiences have been online for a very long time, right? And you will see that the world has massively moved from offline retail to online retail in just about every single country. There is no small economy left today in the world which doesn't have its own version of an Amazon or a Flipkart from India or Shopee, right? Because everything is online. Now, you are not going to go offline anymore, but you're going to have to go somewhere from online, and the somewhere is the virtual world, right? That's the next iteration of the internet. So for each of our companies, it's going to be important to figure out what our place is going to be in the metaverse. What is it that we want to do? Are you a product company that's selling shoes? Should you be selling shoes to people who are in the metaverse? Are you a music producer? who's coming up with the next album. Your album should, will have to be, it's not even a should anymore. I'm absolutely certain in a couple of years, because NFTs let you have the ownership that traditional media does not. Your album is going to be released as an NFT and then going to be sold to multiple distributors around the world, from Spotify to Apple Music to everybody else. So I think from our perspective, be it creative marketing professionals or be it people in sales, we need to realize that we will need to associate with, or be with one of the metaverses and find places and opportunities wherein we could attract global audiences, right? Because again, this is now not limited to country specific. This is all over the place. So find global audiences with the metaverse.
So thanks for that. When you say NFT, for some people who on the call who may not know what an NFT is, can you explain what an NFT is, please?
With my chat from you, I knew this was coming. NFT is a non-fungible token. It essentially provides you with a proof of ownership. I will try to make it very simple. There are two types of tokens that are available in the crypto world today: the fungible tokens and the non-fungible tokens. The fungible tokens are, think of it as these token coins. Think Bitcoin, think Dogecoin, think Ethereum. These can be split multiple ways to be able to own, right? You don't need to own one Bitcoin. A Bitcoin is $40,000 to $45,000 today. So you may not be able to afford an entire Bitcoin, right? But what you can do is you can have a 0.0 something percent of the Bitcoin. So many people collectively can own part of it, and that's a fungible token. A non-fungible token is in its entirety, which can't be broken, right? So think of it as an artist, you want to release a new piece. Today, you could potentially take Mona Lisa and convert it into an NFT, and the ownership of that would be on the chain because it's all very well documented on the blockchain, right? So an NFT, in a sense, what it basically shows you is a proof of ownership, right? It passes on from hand to hand. It can either be transferred, it can be purchased and sold on platforms such as OpenSea, Bluxrare, or RFOX's own upcoming marketplace, NFT marketplace. But essentially, it allows you to own that particular asset, and the ledger of that remains public on the blockchain, so it can never hide from anyone.
Wow. It's a completely fascinating journey that we're going on.
It's an absolutely incredible way for artists, for creative professionals to create your own assets and not worry about those assets being stolen or copied, or because the proof of ownership is so categorically public and listed.
So a few questions are coming through on the chat. How is ownership of media in the metaverse managed? And how does this impact branding and brand building and marketing?
So, I'll answer the ownership bit first. It's a very evolving space, right? We've started with images and GIFs, and that's where the first level of NFTs made. Now we've already graduated to music. There are artists that are already releasing their albums, and big ones, by the way, are releasing their albums as NFTs to own ownership. And I think the next evolution is going to be video. We are launching a video platform which will allow you to mint your videos as NFTs, so that the proof of ownership is with you, and you decide how to sell it, where to sell it, and create a marketplace for these assets wherein people could come and buy content. But the proof of ownership is just absolutely well documented, right? So there is no, you're not buying something that somebody could have stolen from, another video platform, right? Which happens quite commonly because of these downloaded apps. But in this case, the ownership exists on the chain. How does marketing and branding work in this? I mean, nascent stages, but quite clearly, who you're talking to is a Gen Z millennial audience, right? There is absolutely nobody who's going to be born after 2020 who will not know what a Bitcoin is. When they grow up and when they are at the legal age of trading, the first thing they're going to trade will be cryptocurrencies. And they will probably come to traditional markets much later, if ever, right? I mean, that's how fast the world is evolving. So when you're trying to market to an extremely young, aspirational generation that doesn't have the wait time to wait for change the way probably, I'm old enough, you can see from my hair, as some of us did, right? So what you're trying to do is keep up with the times, and you're trying to create a branding experience, which is, branding experiences work both ways, right? But now this is more experiential, because what you're expecting them to do is not just see something, but live that something, right? You are telling them to go inside a virtual reality shopping complex and go try shoes on, and then eventually get them delivered to your house a couple of days later. So your marketing, your branding will now become more experiential, as opposed to more, here's a hoarding, look at how beautiful the colors are, and I'm hoping this will sell content. But that's not going to sell content anymore unless it makes you want to live it. Does that answer the question in whatever sense?
Absolutely, yeah. So how do you see existing solutions such as digital asset management being integrated as part of the metaverse?
So the metaverse absolutely is being built with these in mind. These digital solutions of ownership and asset management are being kept in mind while the building blocks are being built. And obviously, we're still a couple of years away from seeing metaverse to its absolute glory and reality. We are still, in the initial phases of building the blocks of this new era of the internet. But this is something that's already kept in mind, right? And I think NFTs pose the easiest solution in this manner, because whoever started building it, the first thing in their mind clearly was that proof of ownership has to be absolute and clear, right? And also because blockchain works very publicly on chain, the ownership is always written in a code, right? Anybody, any layman can go, I could buy an NFT today, and I have. When I joined this company, I started trading, I started buying NFTs, and I realized that if I were to give you my address, my wax address, which is where all the NFTs reside. If I were to give you my address, you would be able to type it in a website and see the thing that I've owned. You will be able to see each of those assets, and you will be able to see who owned them previously, who gave it to them, till the point of origination. So from the day that asset is made till the last second, the proof of ownership is actually on a chain. Click, 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 click. You can't hide. I'll give you a very interesting example. Just I think last month they found. So a couple of years ago there was a Bitcoin scam, and some people managed to siphon off a couple of $1 million at that time worth of Bitcoin, which is worth billions of dollars today. They found them last month after many years, because the money that they stole was residing in a public wallet, right? Because everybody, it's all public. So the minute they tried to move the assets, they were caught. It's quite interesting, because you just can't hide in this world anymore. And that's the power of decentralization, right? I mean, the era that we're living in today is that we create content, and that content, I take any social media app, you create content, you put it on that, and we're all sharing our pictures, we're all sharing our videos, and none of us actually own that content. The content is technically owned by the company, the platform that you put it, right? What the new era of the internet, what Web3 tells you, is that that's not how it's supposed to be. You own the content, and you also are a profit participant in all the actions that are taken across this particular ecosystem. So take any ecosystem X that gives you tokens and says that as a reward, a percentage of all transactions are actually going to be given back to my token holders. So that every time Amanda or Piyush or anybody else adds a new piece of content, makes a transaction, buys something, sells something, the rewards of that, a percentage of that is distributed to everybody. So you have an incentive for it to be successful, because you are an equity participant now, right? You're actually making money off the internet. Finally, yeah.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? Yeah. Finally, as you say. Let me see if there's any more questions. I think there's one more question here. Will we be able to enter a virtual field without an authorization, or in other words, will access rules be imposed?
This is a very important question, and this is something I think all metaverse companies and virtual companies are grappling with today and trying to answer. We are anyway, you know how human beings are. We are anyway slightly badly behaved in real life. There is no reason to believe we're going to be better behaved in the virtual world.
Yeah.
I mean, that goes without saying, but I think rules are being put in place by each of the companies. Of course, there's going to be access required to enter the place, right? Because you're going to need the virtual reality headsets. B, you're going to need an address to enter, right? Which means that because every transaction, every action is recorded on chain, your entry and exit and your actions within are also recorded on chain, right? So while it would depend on whether some companies would ask you to take access or give access, and the other companies would quite frankly just let you in, but it will all be recorded as an action, right? In terms of code. So what essentially going to happen is, what essentially is going to happen is that your actions are also going to be monitored to a certain extent, right? There are going to be rules put in place wherein things that you can't do in real world, or you're not allowed to be doing in real world, ideally should not be allowed in the virtual world either, right? So if stealing is bad in the real world, then stealing is also bad in the virtual world, right? So same rules would ideally apply there. But I think the mechanics of how these will be implemented is something that I think is being put in place. But I'm fairly confident that by the time these metaverses become an absolute reality for a large chunk of masses, all of this would be pretty much sorted and put in place.
How long do you think that's going to take, for it to become the norm? Like the internet was the norm. I'd say that took, I don't know how long that took to sort of just be. How long do you think that this would take?
So, the reason it took a while for internet to become the norm was because computing took time to evolve, right? We have taken our own sweet time from those boxy, huge screen computers and, servers to the slim single screen computers that we have today. But now you would see the evolution being quite fast. I would actually, it wouldn't take more than a couple of years. It's just moving at such a rapid pace. It's shocking. I go to bed at night, and by the time I wake up the next morning, the design team, the tech team has come up with something that I didn't think was possible. I don't sleep for more than 8 hours. So, I know that the times, but I wasn't sleeping for an entire month, right? But I think it's quite fast. The evolution is happening at a very rapid scale. And I think that's what's going to be defining the adoption as well, right? With more and more companies getting on the bandwagon, with simply the amount of investor money that is being put into it to advance the scale of advancement in that sense, right? Which is going to be extremely, couple of years at best. And in a couple of years, I'm talking about mass adoption. The minimum viable products are already out there. You could buy a virtual, you could buy an Oculus tomorrow and enter a couple of metaverses that are already live. You could be meeting with your peers in a virtual room. And I did it just a couple of weeks ago, and it's the most incredible experience, because after not having been in a meeting room for 2 years because of COVID, you imagine you're sitting in a conference room with all of your fellow executives, and it's so surreal that you have to experience it to feel that there is somebody sitting right here talking to you, looking at you, turning around, responding, because that's what the virtual avatar allows you to do. It takes you and transports you into a Star Trek-ish environment that you didn't think was possible in a lifetime. But here we are.
Yeah, wow. And all, I mean, that meeting, I'm assuming you've all got the VR headsets on, and
yes, and at the same time, it
it
also allows people who don't have access to those to be a part of those. Of course, the experience is not the same, but you could actually participate from the computer as well. So when we do some of these meetings, some people participating through computer, you can see them on screen, and they can see us being silly in the virtual reality. But because obviously we're still learning, right? It's like a kid with new fancy toys, and you could still be a participant despite not having access to the virtual reality headsets. And I think that's going to be another very important thing. Adoption is going to be led both ways. While the world works to make these goggles and headsets cheaper for mass adoption, at the same time, the world is also working, the companies are also working towards ensuring that people with just phones and computers are also able to participate and have an incentive to want to move up in the ladder to, experience it more, because they would see the benefit of and the experience of just what has been built.
Yeah, all very inspirational, and I could actually sit here and talk to you for many hours to come, but I think we need to stop there and allow you to get on with your day as well. Thank you so much for giving your time and for presenting what I find fascinating, and I'm sure the audience did too.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you HS Events for having me here today. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, Piyush.